G'day, mate. 40 here. I thought I'd just do a show explaining some of the basics of the left-right political divide. Now, you might say, oh, the left, that's just all about destruction. The left never builds anything. If the free speech was allowed, if you had free discussion, all right, then the left could never win anything. They're absolutely ruined and destroyed. That's Dennis Prager's position. I don't think it really stands up to much analysis, but let me push back here on Dennis Prager. This is what I don't believe to be true. We'll play him at 1.25.
He was rejected by 6 colleges.
Yep. Oh, it's total discrimination.
Oh, total. It's because he's Asian.
Yep.
Harvard did this to Jews in the 1930s. There were too many Jews. That's a very famous story.
You're right.
So the United Airlines is reserving half of its places for pilots to women and minorities. Not to the best pilots, to women and minorities. They may be great, they may not be. And the left, of course, the left crushes everything it touches, and the Vishu is another example. Anti-merit means the end of the society in which you live. We will now go backwards. We will go into a pre-Mosaic world of nepotism. And in this case, not by family, but by race, gender, and sexual orientation. So your point, I want to explain to people why it was such a great point.
So, yeah, is that what the left is all about? Is it just really all about destruction? It doesn't build anything. It relies on a rigged game to get ahead. I don't think that's a particularly fair summary. So, of course, I go to Wikipedia, the left-right political spectrum, and I think this sentence is pretty useful. So, generally speaking, the left wing is characterized by an emphasis on ideas such as freedom, equality, fraternity, rights, progress, reform, internationalism. Okay, freedom as in your personal freedom to be religious or not religious, to abide by various sexual norms, not freedom as in free markets. Right, the right wing is characterized by an emphasis on notions such as authority, hierarchy, order, duty, tradition, reaction, and nationalism. So political scientists tend to regard the left as including anarchists, communists, socialists, democratic socialists, social democrats, left libertarians, progressives, and social liberals, along with movements for racial equality and trade unionism, also tend to be on the left. Political scientists regard the right as including conservatives, right libertarians, anarcho-capitalists, neoconservatives, imperialists, monarchists, fascists, reactionaries, and traditionalists. So I've been reading a book on political terminology by Andrew Heywood, came out in 2015. So this is what it says about the left-right political difference. Left and right are terms used as a shorthand method for describing political ideas and beliefs, summarizing the ideological positions of politicians, political parties, and movements. They are usually understood as the poles of a political spectrum, enabling people to talk about the center left, far right, and so on. So you generally have the communists on the far left, then socialism, liberalism, conservatism, and fascism. But the terms left and right do not have exact measurements, right? In a narrow sense, the political spectrum summarizes different attitudes toward the economy and the role of the state. Left-wing views support more market intervention and collectivism. Right-wing views favor the free market and individualism. You go deeper, right? Ideas about, sexual freedom, equality, fraternity, human rights, progress, reform, and internationalism generally seem to have a left-wing character. Notions such as the family, the tribe, authority, race, hierarchy, order, reaction, and nationalism generally seen as having a right-wing character. So right-wing is usually more associated with nationalism. Left-wing is more associated with internationalism. So let's have a look here at the entry on internationalism. Oh, man. Where is it? I just want to find internationalism. It's not giving it to me. Okay, I'll have to get my act together. Right, it's Gay Pride Month. So what better way to get in touch with Gay Pride than by watching Season 9, Episode 3 of the British TV show Peep Show by Jesse Armstrong, who also created Succession.
Once upon a time, I might have woken to the sound of a song thrush. Now it's a couple of guys pounding the living daylights out of each other. I mean, it's fine. It's just, when Jeremy had sex with women, I hated the noise, but at least there was something in it for me. Now it's like there are two Jeremys in there humping each other. That would be his dream. So, just to be clear, for my records, you're sleeping with Joe regularly now?
Can't handle it.
I can handle it. I'm fine with it. Just, what, you've gone gay?
Your word, not mine.
Sure, but let's say you had a Wikipedia page, which obviously you don't, regardless of how many times you try and put one up. Would it say that Jeremy Osborne was gay or straight?
I don't fit into your tiny little boxes. I'm just looking for that sacred connection, and for that, I'd fuck any single member of the human race.
Yes. Yes, I believe that.
You know, I've always been a bit gay. I've always liked a bit of that. Like with Pedge in Darty.
You and Pedge?
We used to get pissed and pull each other off. Didn't you? You should have. It was great.
I have a long and varied list of regrets, Jeremy, but not being pulled off by Pedge isn't one of them.
The thing about sex with a guy, it's like getting your car fixed at the actual dealership. They've got all the codes. You just plug right in. I mean, you like blowjobs, don't you, Mark?
I'm eating a fruit corner, Jeremy.
Of course you do. But what's the most blowjobs you've ever had in one day? Like in the first happy days of a relationship?
One.
Right. Well, my life now is a 24/7 blowjob bonanza.
I very much regret starting this conversation.
Put it this way, I'm moving out and I've got a new address for you to forward my post to, Blowjob City.
Jez, I gotta make a move.
Cool. Here's that Beastie Boys CD I was telling you about.
Thanks, but I don't own a CD player.
Oh, yeah. Well, download the shit out of them. They're cool.
Yeah? I think they started...
Okay, that's from the excellent British TV show Peep Show. Oh, I still haven't found my place, so let me play some Richard Spencer.
Now, I genuinely do want Amy to join this. I'll try
Amy
to
Therese.
message her or something, because I do want to know what happened to her. I think I'm curious about her trajectory, but hopefully she'll get back on here. But otherwise, anyone else want to jump in on anything? What were we talking about? Transgenderism?
We were talking about, I think, about eugenics and the sort. I want to ask if you'd ever used any dating apps, Richard, and what your thoughts are on these.
I mean,
we'd love to hear an anecdote. I think I speak for everyone.
I actually got on Bumble not long ago, and then there was actually like some stupid news story written about it. That was pretty funny. But I back in the day, I used like Match.com. This was like 15 or 20 years ago, though. A lot has changed.
Did you...
Okay, pretty scintillating content, but not as scintillating as what I captured around 8 a.m. this morning. I saw a hawk, it captured a dove, and then I captured both of them on this live stream. So prepare to be amazed. So all the other doves, all right, all the other pigeons are squawking and screaming and squealing and protesting, but the hawk is unmoved. All right, so this is how international relations work. Nations and peoples can scream and protest all they want, but there's no higher authority that's going to come to rescue them. In the end, you're usually on your own. And so the best way to survive is to make yourself as strong as possible by living in the center of the herd. So this pigeon, right, got outside the center of the herd, I would suspect, and got captured by this hawk who's having a field day. And then the hawk just carries the pigeon away. And all the other pigeons are squawking and protesting. But that's not gonna bring him back. Off goes the hawk with the pigeon in its beak. Nature, red in tooth and claw. That's the kind of scintillating content that you come to this live stream for. Oh, and Richard Spencer talking about Amy Therese.
Ever have any interesting stories?
Disciples of the capitalist dictatorship. What the hell are you even doing?
I'm making hummus.
Making hummus, he says, like it's perfectly natural. No one makes hummus.
It's only hummus, Jeremy.
What are you going to do next? Start making your own pasta?
As a matter of fact, I have made my...
Okay, let's get back to the big ideas. All right, internationalism from this 2015 book on political concepts. So the term international society, all right, it's the kind of the opposite of the hawk thing, all right? This is not people, acting in society. This is cruelty, people not, following the rules. So The term international society suggests that there should be relations, between and among states that are not like the hawk and the pigeon, but are conditioned by the existence of norms and rules and international law that establish the regular patterns of interaction that characterize a society. So we're all in it together. Our common humanity unites us. So this modifies the realist emphasis on power politics by suggesting the existence of a society of states rather than simply a system of states. So it says that international relations are rules governed. These rules help to maintain international order so that hawks don't just swoop down and take pigeons away and kill them. So the chief institutions that generate cultural cohesion and social integration are international law, diplomacy, and the activities of international organizations. So internationalism is the theory or practice of politics based on global cooperation. So it, as a political idea, is based on the idea that political nationalism should be transcended because the ties that bind the peoples of the world are stronger than those that separate them. So the goal of internationalism is to create political structures such as the UN that can command the allegiance of all the peoples of the world, regardless of religious, racial, social, and national differences. While on the right, we put a lot more emphasis on religious, racial, and national differences. So the major internationalist traditions come from liberalism and socialism, movements of the left. Liberal internationalism is based on individualism. So liberal internationalism is based on the belief that universal human rights ultimately have a higher status than the sovereign authority of the nation. So socialist internationalism is grounded in a belief in international class solidarity, underpinned by assumptions about a common humanity. So people on the right don't really see the common humanity thing nearly as much. They don't look at people primarily as individuals with inalienable rights, but as members of families, tribes, and nations. And whatever rights those families, tribes, and nations can provide, all right, they're going to vary depending upon circumstance. That show, Peep Show, is a bit too much for you, champs and chumps. Okay, I love that show. So feminism, racialism, and religious fundamentalism may be seen to support weak forms of internationalism in that they highlight gender, racial, and religious cleavages that cut across national boundaries. So internationalists basically condemn nationalism. They say it should be transcended. They deny the basic nationalist assertion that the nation state is the sole legitimate unit of political rule. Internationalists argue that nations are just political constructs manufactured by elites to maintain social cohesion and political passivity. So the moral force of internationalism is evident in its association with the ideas of global peace and cooperation and one world government and universal human morality. So Immanuel Kant is the father of this tradition. He envisioned a League of Nations based on the assertion that reason and morality combine to dictate that there should be no war. The weakness of internationalism is that it has underestimated the potency of nationalism, that it has failed to establish international structures that can rival the nation's capacity to stimulate political allegiance. So the dominant tradition in international relations has not been idealism, but realism, all right, which is kind of the opposite of liberal internationalism. All right, realism focuses on the role of power, politics, and the nation state. So liberal internationalists focus on individual rights, global human rights. But the dominant strand of, at least in large parts of the world, of thinking about international relations is realism, not liberal internationalism. Realism is much more a factor on the right rather than the left. Okay, what other beauties do I have for you? Oh, yeah. I wanted to talk about Predisposed. So this is the book came out in 2014, Liberals, Conservatives, and the Biology of Political Differences. So chapter 9 is Can Conservatives and Liberals Live Together, Survive Together? And they have a great description of what a conservative town is like and a liberal town. So remember, left and right, liberals and conservatives, these are evolutionary adaptations that have helped our ancestors to survive for thousands of years. People on the left tend towards more egalitarianism, towards less punishment of wrongdoing, and more innovative ways of doing things. They're more open to that, and they are less hateful about outgroups. while people on the right tend to be much more suspicious and have many more negative feelings about outgroups. So what is a conservative town like? Let's call it Conservaton, right? For conservatives, it may be the perfect place to live. It has a neighborhood watch program that's vigorous, but hardly needed because people in a conservative town tend to be law-abiding and heavily armed. So schools in a conservative town will emphasize discipline, respect for authority, and they will build their curriculums around rule-based instruction like phonics for reading and memorization for math. Conservatons similarly designed houses will be well maintained. They will be clad in pretty much the same 2 colors of vinyl siding and fronted by beautifully manicured lawns. There will be a church on nearly every block. Congregants will give generously to them. Conservaton will be quiet after 10 p.m. It's pretty quiet actually most of the time, except for one Saturday night a month. That night, the racetrack on the edge of town attracts some of the fastest stock cars in the region, along with over 1,000 loyal fans. Town takes pride in its high school football team and its amazingly crisp John Philip Sousa playing marching band. The restaurants in town are cozy and familiar. They haven't changed their menus in decades. They specialize in American food and lots of it. People in a conservative town will dress predictably and nicely. Conservatives will be cliquey, they won't take to outsiders much, and they will be especially wary of the residents of the only other town of consequence in the county, Liberalville. So the liberal community is a perfect place for some people to live. The schools promote experiences rather than rules. Their curriculums change with the latest fads and experiments. Houses are a hodgepodge. Liberalites emphasize preserving the character of older buildings, even if this means foregoing modern amenities. So lawns are unlikely to be showered with the same copious amounts of chemicals and water needed to maintain thick carpets of green grass. Some residents don't even bother mowing. They just let nature take its course and they enjoy the results. The town is light on churches, but it has many bars and pubs. It has community theater. It has coffee shops that sponsor interpretive readings and poetry slams. Movie theaters make an effort to bring in award-winning documentaries and foreign films. New restaurants are constantly popping up. The high school sports team is a joke. The most successful sports team is the girls' soccer team, and they only rarely manage a 500 season. The marching band is equally bad, but improvisational jazz group is known internationally and regularly wins awards. So local kids in Liberalville are forming and reforming garage bands. Liberalville is never quiet. People come and go at all hours. Something is always happening. The loudness extends to fashion. Right? Conservatives wouldn't be caught wearing the clothes that liberals delight in sporting. Liberalites tend to travel a good deal, often abroad. The population of Liberalville will be more diverse than that of the conservative community. It's not uncommon to hear languages other than English. The liberals like what is new and exciting and different. And they're pretty much open to all kinds of lifestyles with one exception, important exception, conservatives. I think that's a pretty good summary of the differences between a conservative community and a liberal community. All right, here's a conversation between Decoding the Gurus, Matt Brown and Chris Kavanaugh on the confluence of the Gurosphere.
But yeah, so but we're not here to talk about AI. Not that we're like strictly doing agenda anyway, but what I wanted to discuss with you, Matt, just man to man, here in our private boudoir, is what I'm referring to as the confluence of the Gurosphere. The cosmic energies that cause the gurus to swirl together in an ever-tightening cosmic spiral of shitness.
I like it. Cosmic. They do. They become intertwined. They find each other. And a network seems to be formed. And it's an interesting thing. You described it to me as a bit of a validation, I think, because when we covered pretty much all of the gurus, most of them, like, we sort of consider them as like little isolated gems. They're interesting in their own right. Yes, they have these common things, but they weren't necessarily connected with each other in any way, shape, or form. But then after covering them and having identified them as fitting our barometer, they then seem to inevitably find each other, even gurus with no apparent connection. And,
yes,
yeah.
it is remarkable. And it, of course, it doesn't apply in all cases, right? You know, Reverend Moon hasn't risen from the grave to collaborate with Eliezer Yudikowsky yet, but there is a clear kind of network, and I'm not even saying that it's necessarily like, you know, a organized network, but rather that there they're all kind of in the same melange, working together. And like, so to give some examples of what I'm talking about, like, we are planning to cover Matthew McConaughey because he has started to promote.
So Ramsey Paul tweets that Tina Wilk, his co-host on Happy Homelands, that she has died.
A weird self-help cult, a kind of like Tony Robbins style exploitative self-help marketing thing. And I watched it, and it's really bad. It's very bad, which is a shame because I really like him as an actor. But he was already a little bit weird because he cropped up from time to time on Michaela Peterson and Jordan Peterson's content, like, you know, saying some kind of weird stuff, but mostly just banal truisms. And then, so we're planning to cover him. He's on the docket. Who should show up on the Lex Friedman roster? Matthew McConaughey. And you're just like, why? And it is because he's promoting that shit show. And of course, like, Lex cannot in any way offer anything critical in response to somebody promoting, you know, a multi-level marketing scam or a self-help scam on this podcast. But yeah, there's that, and there's the fact that, you know, RFK Jr. Coming out as a presidential candidate, which will obviously get him attention, but, you know, he is a sideshow figure, and he is primarily famous for decades-long anti-vaccine advocacy. He was one of the figures that people usually wouldn't mention that they liked. You know, like Brett Weinstein would have been a little bit.
And here's a question I've gotten 50 times in the chat. Do these gurus view vocal leftists as gurus? And the answer is yes. They have covered many left-wing gurus, but as I am not particularly interested in left-wing gurus, I don't think I've even listened to their coverage of left-wing gurus because I'm not interested in left-wing gurus.
But shy about referencing him at the start of the pandemic. Now he would happily endorse his book. So would Joe Rogan, and he wrote the book about Fauci, which all the heterodox people, you know, Lex was saying he's looking forward to reading. And RFK Jr. Crops up with Jordan Peterson, with Joe Rogan appearing soon on Barry Weiss. I imagine he will appear on Lex's podcast too, probably Trigonometry. You know, it's Trigonometry had Schellenberger on, you know, who we were talking with Renee DeResta about. And obviously there is a connection in these characters that they're kind of within the heterodox alternative media sphere. But it is like a weird energy that they're all meeting up and having their conversations. And yeah.
Was it Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, so you can basically get a good read on people by who they hang out with. And they're absolutely right. The gurus do hang out with the gurus. See, most normal people don't want a huge amount of attention. But one of the signs of gurus is they're absolutely insatiable for attention. They recognize, you know, their fellow gurus. They recognize the monetization and attention-getting possibilities of, you know, getting together with fellow gurus. Like, real scholars are not yearning, generally speaking, for attention. They're not, trying to manipulate you into having a parasocial relationship with you. Real scholars don't try to sell you supplements. But, like, Dennis Prager is good friends with Dave Rubin. I mean, like Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, like Sam Harris, Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein, Douglas Murray. These guys all pal around together because they're all working from the same shtick. All right.
Peterson, who was talking to James Lindsay just recently.
Yeah. So Jordan Peterson just had James Lindsay on, which is, you know, I call back the.
Are all deviations from the modern orthodoxy worthy of ridicule? No. And if you listen to any of Decoding the Gurus, they don't just say, oh, all gurus are worthy of ridicule, all gurus are the same. So those people who behave and say ridiculous things, such as, oh, the left only stands for destruction, like Dennis Prager says, or the things that John Peterson says about, what's animating Black Lives Matter? Oh, no, what's animating Antifa? They hate God. That's the reason for Antifa. They just hate God. So when people do ridiculous things, it's worthy of being pointed out.
I think it's our second and third episode are James Lindsay and Jordan Peterson. And we've actually kind of documented James's spiral into, from at least nominally atheist, secular, still like classical liberalism to hard right MAGA chudhead, denying global warming, arguing against vaccines, and promoting election conspiracies. And
okay, let's get Dooovid into the show. Dooovid, what's going on, man? How are you?
Shem.
So what's new with you? I haven't spoken to you in probably about a month.
Yeah, not much. Just laying low. Doing my studies, my streaming to everly small audiences. I've done 6 shows with Michael now. We finished Shacharis, the morning prayers. Went through a lot of it word for word, and then the last one we moved on to Grace After Meals and a few other things like the prayer before going to sleep, and the Traveler's Prayer. One of your watchers started watching that. This guy Arnie Heywood, I think he calls himself.
Oh yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah,
that he's in the process of converting through the LA Bezdin, and he's the only one actually who, although we have some viewership, I could see that like definitely people are watching it. However, he's the only one that's reached out.
Wow. And anything interesting come out of these shows and the discussions they're in?
No, not really. I mean, I think Michael's. I mean, to me, it was like fresh. Like chizik, they'd say in Hebrew, like inspiration to keep going, working harder. That because he's out of the area, like he hardly knows any Jews, and there's just one synagogue in his area, and most of the people at his synagogue are I guess like conservative converts. There's only even a handful of Jews at his synagogue, and so just someone that's interested in it, that's not connected, has been refreshing. So there's no politics, there's no just like I don't know the Hebrew machaziking, like inspiring each other to work harder in our Judaism, at least the prayers, without any of the politics or communal difficulties.
Right, but also without the politics and community difficulties, it means that you're not integrating into the wider Jewish community. So is that a concern for you? Do you think it's a concern for him?
No, I mean, because one thing, like my parents. I mean, he lives out near my father's doctor's office. So ironically, that one of my father's patients also is going to this synagogue, and she actually knew my father, met her, and she's like, "But your father's not Jewish," because I'd met her at the downtown synagogue years ago when she had been going there before it went liberal, and yeah, I think that's probably better for me to be outside of the Jewish community. So I probably have more long-term success because I don't think I'll be capable of integrating into the Jewish community. But I'm better off as a friend to the Jewish community from the outside, and helping maybe like spread Judaism in a further place where it's not as strong. So I think that's probably better for me than this eternally losing battle of trying to integrate into the Jewish community.
You sound a little bit like Jordan Peterson, who's a big promoter of being religious, going to church, joining a religious community. But when someone actually took him to church recently, he was just absolutely bored out of his mind because they weren't, wrestling with the big issues that he was interested in. So for some people, like the theory of religion is more interesting than the concrete, communal practice of religion. Do you resonate with any of that?
Well, I think it's just basic Protestantism. I mean, in the E. Michael Jones claim that we've talked about, that there, his expression, there's no Protestant approach to Judaism. But I think that's general America. People have very dogmatic, strong religious beliefs. They pray to God, talk to God in their own words, maybe study the Bible, but they don't believe in communal religion, and find communal religion generally corrupting and uninspiring. So, I mean, Judaism's, I mean, you could argue near impossible to take that approach, but obviously you can take that approach. But you know, like, God forbid, I'd still need a miracle to find a wife and bring up children. And if I, you know, even if I did successfully find a woman that wanted to, you know, bring up a family, then yeah, I'd probably have to like homeschool them or send them to like some public school or you know, some random private school. But I think it'd be too difficult for me to integrate into the Orthodox community. Maybe you, as an older bachelor without kids, has less of that issue. To say you just integrate, it's, you know, without having successfully you know, built up a family, and then having the difficulty of how are your children going to fit into the community.
So has the community failed you? Have you failed the community? How would you assess that?
I don't think there's been a failure. I mean, because a lot of people, you know, told me straight from the beginning it was going to be like this, and that's, you know, kind of what I've stuck to. Like, I'm a half Jew, and I mean, the community hasn't failed me. It's just not for me. And this, you know, the community, I'm saying, like, I could probably go to synagogue, you know, I pick up kosher food. I go to events. I don't know if it's failed me, but I think that the main services that the community offers, it's not really there to offer to me. So I mean, like, in Chabad's there for me, aspects of the community are there for me. And then even like, okay, like my local Young Israel, it's not really there for like to be a crutch for me. Like if I want to go there, I should pay. And then I got to say, like, is it worth paying like, you know, $1,500 a year to be part of that community? And then even as an outsider, like, you have to work to be part of a community. And I'm not sure that I would be willing to put the work in to be part of the community like I did for, you know, for years in Brooklyn. But then also would have been probably near impossible for me to build up a family within the community, like as an outsider who did things for the community and worked to become valuable to the community, as opposed to like a father who had kids in the community. Probably would have been a different scenario. That's why I was putting back on you. Like, you could be someone who's part of the community, friend of the community, but what would it be like if you were like a father who was trying to you know, put your kids in their schools and things like that? And I'm not saying the community is failing you. It's just that it's a Jewish community. It's not designed for outsiders. And I haven't been able to, you know, make myself an insider. It's been too difficult for me.
Well, what about just a very basic, simple idea of looking where you can contribute? I mean, surely there are things that you could contribute to a concrete Jewish community near you.
Well, I mean, I think at this point I contribute. Actually, you know, God forbid, also, you know, with rising anti-Semitism, I'm more of a contribution to the Jewish community as an outsider in an area where they have less influence as a friend. So like within the Jewish community, there's very little I could contribute. And like we were talking about, you know, I would probably be stuck to contributing at it, you know, doing menial service, or financially, and at a level, you know, like Jews, to some extent, money is our thing. So even if I have more money than than the average guy, that still, it'd just be a drop in the bucket for the amount of money for Jewish Institute. So I'm probably more valuable to the community on the outside.
So
I wouldn't say I'm more value to the community as a non-Jew. That okay, I'm a half Jew, but from the extent that I'm more valuable to the community as you know, as a non-Jew, Jewish friend to the community, than as a Jew.
So why are you so convinced of that? Most rabbis are happy to have, you know, an extra person in synagogue. Most rabbis are particularly happy to have someone who makes up a minyan. Most rabbis are happy to have someone around who knows as much Torah as you do. Most communities, you know, need to make a minyan. They need to organize to get things done, you know, to have people, you know, volunteer to take on various tasks. Why do you think they wouldn't welcome your contributions in these areas?
Well, we've talked about this in the past. I said, like, no, I mean, there's not really much I could contribute within the Orthodox community. And so, okay, like, relatively, like, okay, I went to good yeshivas, I studied Torah, but within the Orthodox community, like, there's so many people who, like, you know, studied yeshiva and like rabbis, and there's not really like okay, they need me for a minion in like in the satellite areas away from the community. They don't need me for a minion like around me. That like they got like none of these places are short on a minion. And in terms of even the liberal synagogue now, they have like 3 rabbinical assistants. And so like Chabad or something, all these places have like like a rabbi and like 3 rabbinic assistants. So like they don't need like another rabbinic assistants, and there's a lot of internal competition. In fact, like God forbid, in the Orthodox community, the one thing they produce is rabbis, and a lot of those rabbis need to make a living off of their Torah learning. So I'd somewhat be competition. That's, I think we talked about that, where it's saying within the community, I would probably at best be minimal service. Like I'd probably be like driving around charity collectors, or like being like a janitor in the synagogue. I don't think that they'd have any special purpose to put me to. I mean, maybe your area is different, but I mean, it does not every like. I mean, one thing like maybe because there's competition and there are constantly places trying to open up synagogue, but I would assume that like almost every established place has like they're not like have 9 people waiting for a 10. They all have like huge minyanim. They don't need like a 10, and they all have like a rabbi and like 5 junior rabbis. And the problem is more getting the rabbis they already have paid than trying to get rabbis.
Well, I'll just list off reasons why I disagree with you from my own experience of Orthodox Judaism. Every Orthodox Jewish synagogue of which I'm aware is, glad for a new face, glad for someone to make up a minion, glad for someone to contribute his talents, glad to, in particular, to have someone with some Torah learning, glad for someone who can elevate the community in any way. If you can walk into a room and, increase the happiness level or the level of Torah learning or of Torah observance, or just by your own dedication to your davening or to your Torah study or to the practices of the tradition, you then get to uplift other people. Even if you're a bachelor, right? Even if you're an eccentric character, if you bring something to the table, you bring a good spirit, a humble spirit, a contrite spirit, a spirit that's yearning for God and for Torah and for being of service to the Jewish people, I find it hard to believe that almost any Orthodox synagogue would not be glad to have you around.
Well, I mean, maybe. I don't mean they're going to like turn me away at the door. I hope that they would be glad to have me around. It's saying they don't need me. It's not like they need me for a minion or that I have any special service that I would be able to offer them. And even like the Orthodox community, like like, I'm not sure what I would offer them. I mean, like they got, and in what I would offer them, they probably don't have that much of an interest in terms of like secular learning. So in the more Orthodox places, like the more secular learning, they might not care about, or they might prefer to somewhat keep that at an arm's distance. And then just things like having a television, being part of a mixed marriage, and saying like that I have like a brother who converted to Christianity, or like non-Jewish relatives, could be relatively problematic, especially with like rising anti-Semitism, that there's levels of distrust, and it's tough to get past the levels of distrust. So especially in the center. So when you get further on the outside, but I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but I don't think they need me. Like they don't need me. Like no one's calling asking me for my service. They might be friendly, happy to have me around, but I don't really see there being something like major that like they're not recruiting me to contribute. And I think my contribution is probably more on the periphery, and as I said, like I'm more valuable to the Jewish community as a goy than as a Jew.
Now,
because these days there's less and less non-Jews. These days the Jewish community needs their non-Jewish friends of the Jewish community. So, or there's less and less non-Jews who are willing to put themselves out there to stand up for the Jewish community. So in that sense, like I'm more valuable as a non-Jew to the Jewish community than as a Jew. I mean, maybe I would maybe put yourself in that same. Maybe you have a hard time looking at like that. But I could also see that for you, that although like you might be a convert and self-identify yourself as a Jew, but to some extent you're more valuable to the Jewish community as a non-Jew than as a Jew.
Right. You'd find almost no Orthodox rabbis supporting your assertion here. I mean, you're willing to disagree with virtually every Orthodox rabbi on the planet.
Right, because that's theological. But I'm saying on a practical basis.
On a practical basis, every Orthodox rabbi would disagree with you.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I'm just saying you're differing from
theology.
every single Orthodox rabbi, not just theology. Practically, they would say you're far more valuable inside the community than standing outside the community.
Yeah, but that's from the believer's perspective. But I'm saying, what about your typical Orthodox Jew? I mean, we've talked about this countless times, where you've said there's a difference between the the rabbis and the laity. So even if I grant your point that no Orthodox rabbi would agree with that assessment, what about the Orthodox Jewish community? What about the average person in synagogue? Do they see you more valuable as a non-Jew or as a Jew?
That's a great question, and so I don't think that there would be the same universal reaction. Like I'm pretty sure every Orthodox rabbi would disagree with your assessment, but as far as Orthodox laity, I think it'd be much more of a mixed reaction. Basically, members of an Orthodox synagogue want people around who they're comfortable with, and generally speaking, Orthodox Jews are not terribly comfortable with bachelors in their 40s and 50s, and not terribly comfortable for most Orthodox Jews. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, to some extent, they're not comfortable with outsiders at all.
Yeah.
And so even if you were an insider, so if you were, raised an Orthodox Jew, even if you were, a community leader, a rabbi's son, and a bachelor, it would be problematic. As an outsider, it could actually be the opposite, that as an outsider, you might be more valuable as a bachelor. But like I said, like you as a convert or me as a half Jew, I mean, God forbid you could defend, but I mean, Jews are scared or skeptical of outsiders, and with rising anti-Semitism, there's a lot like barriers, people looking into you, or you're like, who's this guy? Like, does he have nefarious motives? And when you're an outsider, it's more difficult to prove that you don't have nefarious motives. And then, God forbid, like with rising anti-Semitism or something like that, then you can have association with the when you're on the inside, it's going to be more security risks and questions about who you're associating with, as opposed to when you're on the outside. Then you could be an ally or your friend, defender of the community. It's much easier from the outside than from the inside.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, it's much easier to be a lone wolf and to just do your own thing, because you're not accountable to concrete people. So yeah, it's easier. But what
are you saying? You could be our guy in this other place. So if they don't have our guy in this other place, and they say like, well, this is our guy in this other place, as opposed to like when you're stuck in the middle, then you're saying, well, there's this guy that a lot of people are skeptical of. But I mean, so if you're in this other place, the people are skeptical of you. They're skeptical from a distance, and it kind of disappears. And then the people who value he's our guy in this other place. I mean, you don't see that at all, or you've always been kind of in the center of the community. You've never been like on the periphery where you were kind of like your guy in a territory where they didn't really have much influence in that territory.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there weren't a lot of Orthodox Jews around the pornography industry when I was writing on the pornography industry. So I certainly experienced marginalization. But here's what I'll share on this, and perhaps challenge you on. In my life experience at 57 years of age, I find that people pretty much react to me akin to how I react to myself. So if I'm at ease with myself, other people are at ease with me. If I'm troubled and conflicted with myself, if I'm at war with myself, then other people are going to be troubled and uncomfortable with me. So I think our own reaction to ourselves sets the message and sets the standard for how other people are going to react to us. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would largely agree with that. And it might be how I'm saying, like, if I feel like I don't belong here, other people are going to feel like I don't belong there. And we talked about that the other time, like the handshaking ritual, like why I don't go to synagogue, because like, well, you know, after everyone's going to line up and shake the hands with the rabbi, and I'm going to shake the hands with the rabbi or not. And if I don't, like, everyone's going to look at me like, what's wrong with this guy? How come he's not lining up to shake hands with the rabbi like everybody else? And if I do shake hands with the rabbi, then you have like that fear factor that, like, oh man, the rabbi's going to like call me out for all the things I'm doing wrong, and or the implication that I'm getting myself into something I don't really want to get myself into, in the sense that what I'm doing wrong, so to say, from the rabbi's perspective, I don't want to change that. So if I line up to shake his hand, then I'm gonna, like, be a hypocrite if I don't start changing these things. And like, I don't know if we came to clarity last time we spoke about that, where you agreed with me that there is this thing where you go to a synagogue and everyone lines
Yes.
up and shakes hands with the rabbi, and you either do it or you don't. And if you don't, it sends a big signal. And if you do, it could take a big psychological toll on you, like you're signing up for more than maybe you wanted to sign up for.
Yeah, no, 100% agreement there. But I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, what you're talking about may have absolutely nothing to do with Orthodox Judaism. I suspect that you're not closely connected part to any real life community, that you are isolating yourself. It's not like you're part of a day-to-day stamp club or chess club or engineering club. I think you have steadily isolated yourself since COVID. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, since COVID, I've largely isolated myself. Although I went to this like Mormon baptism today, randomly. Like, Mormon missionaries like hit me up on Facebook, and then like convinced me to come to their church, and there was like a baptism tonight. And so I just like randomly went in and watched their ceremony. And then, like, it's kind of weird. I gave the guy $20 afterwards. Like, God forbid, this 20-year-old African American who became baptized as a Mormon. Like, I walked over and gave him like $20 afterwards. Like, good luck, kid. And I mean, I was telling him I respect Mormons, and like like Mormons are seem to like good, honest, hardworking people, but like I don't really buy it or believe it. I don't want to become Mormon. But I think, like, generally I'm pro-social. I'm still active in the chess club, and I think I could go in. And I mean, it's largely because I'm getting old. I don't really value. I don't think there's much value in being part of social clubs. I like to read and do my research, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to accomplish by joining a social club. I more want to find people that have common interests with me, which are very rare. And I seem to find better results online just finding people to intellectual stimulation. And for occasional like business or conventions, I don't seem to have any problem like going and doing a little business, or even mostly now I do e-commerce or speaking to people. And to some extent, like, okay, I went to the Mormon event, and like they were kind, and I was kind of like, yeah, this is really interesting, but I don't really want to convert. And it's kind of like that now with like Orthodox Judaism, where I feel like like if I went to Orthodox Judaism, even though to some extent I consider myself an Orthodox Jew, where I'd be like, yeah, like I like Judaism and I have my own understanding of Judaism, but I don't really want to prescribe to your understanding of Judaism. And then it's kind of like, well, what are you coming around for? So that was like when the Mormons years ago, it was pretty nice. Like, the missionaries were coming to my house and we were learning, and it was feeding them, and they even helped me with my yard work. But like eventually, like, you're going to convert or not? And then like, like I wasn't going to convert. So like, why are we hanging out? So to some extent, Orthodox Jews are similar to that, like cultish tendency, where it's either like, well, are you going to, fully join in or not? And like, yeah, I don't really think so. And then it's like, so then it's really, well, why are you hanging around? And so people move on with their lives. And
Yeah.
so I give the example of the lining up to shake hands. So like, even the Mormons,
Yeah.
like eventually this guy converted. So like I was just a guest and like, oh, like we're so glad you're here. And I shook hands and I spoke with people and it was all nice and friendly. But if I came a few more times, like eventually it would be like, like they would force me to convert or force me out.
And did they have a particular affection for you because you were Jewish?
Not, I mean, it's probably mixed. Philo and anti-Semitism. I mean, so there was maybe only like 30 people there. So, and it was in a African American, so it was like probably like half African American, half white, and almost all like, so to say like FFB people who brought up in Mormonism were white. And, but it was in a, like a mostly African American neighborhood. So I would say it's tough because there were like 30 people there and 5 to 10 people came over, maybe like 10 people came over and said hi. 5 people, we shook hands and spoke a few minutes and were friendly. So, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, split and the people who just weren't interested avoided me and, maybe made negative comments about me. But, the only people who I dealt with were very friendly, which is largely like most Orthodox synagogues where, most of the people I deal with are friendly. And then there might be an occasional person who, the people who don't like me, there's a lot of, synagogues for 20 years, like a decade, like I've just never spoken to a lot of people and I could kind of tell they don't really like me. And there's also kind of people where like I'm friendly with one of them, but not their friend. So for like, like 10 years going to the local synagogue, I would speak to like, one guy and I've never once, maybe shooken hands a handful of times with the guy who sits right next to him, like their best friend. So, I mean, I just think social dynamics are like that where, it's like a 50-50, people like you, don't like you.
And how intense, how hungry are you for love? Would you say 10 out of 10, 5 out of 10, take it or leave it?
Yeah, I'm an INTP. I'm probably in like a 3. I'm kind of like a loner, isolation. I like just studying and reading. I'm more kind of, hurts me that I failed in building up a family. And, but I think it hurts me more the failure than being lonely. So I don't necessarily think it's like I desire female companionship or mind being by myself. I think it's that, it hurts me that I failed in building up a family. I'm not sure if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I of course I understand that and empathize with that. But what about just love from men, non-erotic? Just I have male friends who I love, and I presume they love me. How important is that love to you?
I mean, it's semi-important. I mean, I have to say, okay, I have a handful of friends that I've been friends with over the years. I mean, I could make new friends. Like I started going to the chess club back after COVID, and I've met new people and kind of made new friends. And I could see making new friends. I might try more to do it. Like Michael, I hadn't even met him till a few months ago, and now I'm hanging out with him more than almost anybody else. So I mean, it's good to have friends, but it's a lot of effort to go through the social situations, and then to break the barrier. Like you could go to a location and be friendly with people, but then to like take it to a personal level, do you want to grab a bite to eat? Do you want to come over to my place? So usually I just don't, like, unless we have a significant amount of common interest where I think it'd be worth putting it to the next level of association.
And what about maintaining, developing, deepening close ties to family, extended family, and relations?
Well, I serve my parents, like my mom, and my mom's retired and in her 70s, and my dad's still working, but I serve my parents. I see my mom basically every day. I work for my dad. I do basic things for my dad. We have a business together. So God forbid, I mean, my parents are in their 70s, and they'll probably need more and more of my help. So, they'll probably be my routine till my parents pass away. And so I mean, it hurts me. Like, God forbid, I feel loneliness. I'd like to be married. I'd like to have a family. I'd like to have children that would take after me. Although I'm not actively doing anything. I'm not dating. I'm not trying to meet women. But I think I'm mentally prepared. Like, I'd like to be married. But God forbid, like, I don't even know where I'd start.
And what about your need for laughter? A lot of people really like to laugh, but I've rarely seen you laugh. How important is humor and laughter to you?
Not important at all. I have no need to laugh. I have almost no need for entertainment. Uh, I feel like there's these great mysteries that I really want to understand. So, like, I have Week in Review, and I'm researching all these things, and I realize these are I'm selling books. I have like thousands of books now. I have like 700 ebooks now, and I have shelves of books, and I'm organizing my dad's library, and my dad just has like like the mother lode that like he like well over 10,000 books, and indexing and organizing them, and we're selling books, and and we have a business together. So my dad's constantly buying new stuff. So yeah, and I'm kind of like hooked on these like mysteries that I want to solve, and like I realize any of these subjects I could be investigating from now till till the day I die. So I don't feel any lack of motivation. I mean, sometimes I feel like I put so much effort into it that like I got to seek out a community. I almost was going to go to San Diego in August. They have a a convention like of the science of consciousness at some like spiritual center in San Diego, August 18th through 20th on a weekend. Well, I probably won't go, but so like I'm streaming, I'm talking to people. I almost would want to seek out companionship related to expertise level, common interest. Although I think it's very difficult in that sense. It probably have to be like professional or convention. So I think like God forbid I lost Jennifer Week in Review. We stopped working together. It's almost been 3 months. But I wanted to be into writing and try to like write a book. And I bought myself Dooovid.com. I have my blog, but I'm not good at self promotion, and I'm not sure if I'm ever going to get down to writing, or if I did write, if I'd be able to promote it in a way that would facilitate like intellectual. I mean, I know you wrote your book and a handful of people read it, and I think our friendship or association is definitely been facilitated by the fact that I read your books. Although I would doubt that you were ever like invited, maybe a handful of times invited as like a speaker or guest, or that having written your books like gave you access to groups of intellectuals, or maybe it's like a qualification where you're part of a group of writers, but not necessarily that they because of what you wrote, but just that you're qualified to be part of their group.
Yeah, I'd say with the first book, I probably went on 60 plus radio stations and various TV shows. With the other books, just a handful of radio stations, and I'm not sure if I did any TV, but I certainly am treated like a peer when I get together with writers, and that's based at least in part on my books. But let me pick up on something you're talking about there. Where do you get the strength to do the things that you want to do? Where do you get the strength to do the things that you need to do? Where do you get the strength to push yourself to do things that aren't comfortable, but you value them?
We're just training and discipline. So I'm relatively pretty disciplined. I have like a good work ethic. All like anything related to my parnasa, I always take care right away. I don't push things off. Most of the time, like whatever activities I have to do for the day, that's the first thing I do. Till the day, and I don't do anything else, and I'll work at it till it's done before I do anything else. Curiosity drives my intellectual. Like I read and study constantly. I think purely based off of curiosity, because I've been more and more down that anything ever is going to come of my reading and studies other than filling my curiosity. Like like I'm going to write a book or become a speaker or part of some tour or like I'm skeptical that that's ever going to happen, but I do it because I'm curious. Other than that, like I said, like okay, like God forbid, um, I would like to get married and have children. I'm not doing anything about it. Like I see myself gaining weight, and I'll start working out. Like I'm hovering, God forbid, about 210. Although I'm feeling pretty strong. Like I do push-ups, sit-ups, I do yoga, stretching, swimming. So I take care of my health. Like I spend active time. So I'm not sure. I think I just have a general discipline that I probably worked at in my early man years, where I decided it's not good to be lazy, and developed relatively a good work ethic. Although, God forbid, I lost kind of motivation for life. So the only real motivation I have is my intellectual curiosities.
Yeah. So what happens when loss of motivation and feeling down conflict with your discipline? I would have to expect from my own experience that I have a lot less discipline when I'm feeling down. So how about you?
Well, I said, man, I'm pretty disciplined in general, but yeah, it's a discipline. I mean, like the Hasidic, like I think there's a statement like depression's not a sin, but it leads to all the other sins. And yeah, when I'm depressed, I just have no motivation, and that's probably why I don't really do anything. Like I'm not really motivated to go out and meet people, to get a job, to like dating, to be part of anything, because I'm kind of like depressed that I mean that like not necessarily like society's going to collapse, but that I don't have a place in the world. And I think it comes because I basically went all in on Judaism, and I kind of failed at it, and therefore uh, I don't really see my place. So it's difficult because like I'm like like call it like a failed Baal Tshuva, and like I don't even know how to explain myself. So I mean, like I went to the Mormon. So I'll tell people like, oh, I studied to be a rabbi, but then I never practice as a rabbi, and work as a civil engineer. So I could give some sort of explanation, but and I think largely because, like I said, I went all in on Judaism, and then to some extent kind of like failed in my Judaism, at least being part of a community that it's kind of taken the will out of life for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That I think everyone can resonate and relate to that because we've all.
I mean, you're probably the
suffered
same. I mean,
failures.
you went all in on Judaism, and without Judaism, you got nothing else. And so if you failed in your Judaism, you're already all in on it.
Yeah, if I failed in my Judaism, it would be absolutely crushing. I've experienced failures in my Judaism, but I've never experienced a sense of, well, I may have occasionally experienced an overall sense of failure, but I've never stopped going to shul, never stopped having strong friendships in Jewish life and participating in the community. But let me ask you something. If you were to get admiration, the identical form of admiration, expression of gratitude and respect for something you've done, for me, it would be 10 times more powerful than average if it came from an attractive young Jewish woman. It would be more meaningful to me if it came from a Jew, particularly an Orthodox Jew, than pretty much any other group. It'd be more meaningful to me if it came from an accomplished writer. And then when it comes to non-Jews, it'd be more meaningful and intoxicating to me if it came from an attractive young non-Jewish woman, compared to, say, an overweight, plain, non-Jewish woman or non-Jewish man. But what about for you? What's your experience of admiration? Is it much more intoxicating when it comes from Jews than non-Jews? Is it more intoxicating when it comes from, say, young pretty women as opposed to non-young pretty women?
I'm a goal-driven person, so like I don't like flattery, so I'm not sure about like admiration. So I would be more goal directed. So admiration in the sense that someone who was working together on something meaningful. I might even prefer someone who doesn't admire me that works together with me on something meaningful than someone who admires me just for admiration. And that, that comes from religious training. I was thinking when you're saying, I mean, like Michael's been like the godsend in the sense, like, I don't know if it say like he admires me, but I mean, he's thankful. Uh, he comes, like, he streams, he listens to me. Usually when we're done streaming, like, kind of, I mean, God forbid, like lecture him about Judaism, but like kind of try to inspire him because I love Judaism. So I could see maybe you as a playwright, because I don't read fiction or watch many movies, but I remember I was listening to a great lecture course series on the history of literature, and this was specifically to Shakespeare. And like I've never really read Shakespeare, but I listened to the great lecture course on it, and saying the model is that first you have a male friend, and then that male friend switches to a female friend, the precursor to romance. And also when we were talking about the psychology and narrative identity and role identity, there's many people who think that adolescents friends are friendships more important in adolescence, and male friends in adolescence are basically like a precursor training for your eventual female mate. That I mean, nothing homosexual, even in the basic assessment, but saying like you're very tight. You have a male friend that's your best friend in high school, and that person's kind of like your training for what will eventually be your wife. So I could see that, like in general, I pray, and I believe in providence. So yeah, like Michael, like a female version of Michael, like would be my wife.
Yeah.
So like I never expected, like, I mean, even just Michael, that I mean, basically I'm teaching him how to read Hebrew for free. But even that, like, just that someone's like, wow, like, like I enjoy your streams and wants to learn and wants to hear me ramble. Yeah, it's kind of intoxicating. And like, yeah, I mean, certainly if there was like a female version of Michael, that would, probably be my ideal wife.
Yeah.
Although he's not academic. I mean, so I like, I appreciate Michael's friendship and him wanting to work together, but he's not really academic. He doesn't have much university background. He's not much of a reader. But just off his love and interest to Judaism, we've been able to develop a friendship and relation. So I mean, it wouldn't just be a female version of Michael. It'd still have to be someone that would fit my personality type. But it still gives me, hope that that woman's out there. And that's also kind of why I started streaming. Saying if there's the right woman out there for Dooovid, it would probably be someone who started by watching my streams. And so I still keep that hope out there. That's why I stream. That's why I put myself out there, even though I don't get I see people watching me, but I don't, like you have a chat, like I almost have no chat. And like my Discord, God forbid, the majority of my feedback is kind of like still negative, either like counter-Semitic or Jews harping on me for various reasons. So like I'll occasionally get a message, but I would say like even though like I haven't done anything controversial in really like a year, but still like 75% of my feedback is negative, and my feedback's pretty limited. So like just that I keep on putting myself out there. It's largely in the hope that I mean, really it's what Andrew Tate said it, but like I'm on such a small level. When Andrew Tate said like, well, why is he streaming? He says he likes meeting people, put himself out there because he constantly still meets interesting people. So I mean, I think that's why I'm doing it. So even though I get majority negative feedback, but still occasionally I meet people and interesting connections enough that I keep on doing it, and the hope that eventually, somehow I'll meet my wife through doing this.
And if you met someone who did admire you, would you think that there was something wrong with them? Do you think they were broken in some way, that they had misjudged you, or would you welcome it?
I guess I'd welcome it if it made sense to me. Like in the sense, like, I do a lot of research. I talk a lot about a lot of things that there's not much content on. So I mean, people, like, I do have a handful of people who reach out and they appreciate my content, and trying to explain, or even just reading papers, like of various things, or even like Arnie. I mean, I don't know if that's his real name or not, and if he doesn't want to use it, that's fine. but even him just thanking me for the Hebrew lessons. I mean, even Arnie, God forbid, he said he said he was wrong about me. He saw me on your show, and I think he thought I was like, I don't know the word, like a suicidal maniac or something like that. But then he saw my streaming with Michael and changed his mind. But yeah, I don't really need admiration. I might feel it was a little weird if someone admired me because I'm more introverted. So it would probably, I would probably be skeptical. But if there was some sort of utility to it, where someone, said like, I really like the topic, I'm also interested in the same things you're interested in, and that's why I admire you, as opposed to just kind of like, I admire you, and maybe you as an extrovert, or whatever narcissist tendencies, you might have the opposite approach where you appreciate blind admiration as opposed to utilitarian relationships.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that. But yeah, I love the teaching company, the great courses, wonderful courses on Shakespeare and hundreds of different topics from the greatest academic teachers. How soundly do you sleep, Dooovid?
I sleep relatively good. Just to mention, I am in the top 1% of the teaching company's customers. In fact, my dad, thank God he has the finances. He purchases, like, he actually owns hard copies of like probably like 75% of the teaching company's stuff. And I listen to basically all the teaching company's content. So they had a thing where you could see what part you are in the teaching company. I put my info in. They said I'm their top 1% of listeners. So I listen to more content than basically anybody of theirs. I listen to in 2-speed even. I sleep relatively okay. Like we spoke about that. I mean, maybe if you're living in a one-room apartment, but generally, I'm able to. Thank God, also being self-employed, where I don't have tomorrow. I got to wake up early because my mom needs me. There. So I'll have to set my alarm today at a dentist appointment. I set my alarm 8 o'clock. Tomorrow I'll set my alarm 7 o'clock. But most days I don't set my alarm, and even if I sleep till 9 or on a rare occasion 10 o'clock, it doesn't matter because there's nothing that has to be done. But I think usually I sleep relatively sound. I just study and read and watch content till I start getting tired. Then I brush my teeth, or sometimes even brush my teeth earlier after I know I'm not going to eat or drink anything else that night, and I go upstairs, and most nights fall right asleep. And if I have like if I feel that, like, most nights I'm able to go upstairs to my bedroom and lay down and fall asleep within 5-10 minutes, sometimes even right away. And occasionally I lose the energy where I can't focus my mind to do anything else, and then I'll go upstairs and I'll read till I fall asleep. But I still stay up till, like, on average, like midnight or 1 most nights, and occasionally, like if I'm out, I'll fall asleep at like 10. Like, God forbid, I'm 45 now. As I gotten older, I occasionally take naps in the afternoon, although most days not, but maybe like 1 or 2 days a week. And I do physical labor, so someday, like, I'll move like thousands of pounds of boxes. Just like 10s, 20, boxes. I'll be moving boxes and stuff all day, and so occasionally I'll be like tapped and take a nap on the couch. And even occasionally I'll be out and be like 2 hours, like decided to take a nap, and then it's like 2 hours later and I wake up. But I think, like, relatively, I've conquered my sleep difficulty. As a child, I had horrible sleeping problems. I couldn't fall asleep at night. I was tired all day, and I'd have my head down. I'd be up at like 2, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and then I'd force myself to get up and do the day, and I'd be tired all day. So but I think largely I've conquered my sleep problem. My mom and dad both have sleep machines. They both get up very early, go to sleep very early. My mom, her whole life, has got up like 4 or 5 in the morning, and they're also overweight. So both my mom and dad use sleep machines, go to sleep early, wake up very early.
And have you considered going clean shaven?
No, I've had a beard like since I went to Israel in 18. I don't even. No, I mean like I've been burning it. Yeah, I'm still doing the Rebbe Nachman beard, Hasidic burning, so I look a little bit grungy. I'm not sure, like God forbid, like I'm turning gray, I'm turning white, like. But I think I just go the white beard. So I've had it my whole life. I don't even know what I'd look like without it.
Okay,
And
great.
my identity is as a Hasidic Jew. So like even like I'm saying like God forbid, like I still feel like I'm a Hasidic Jew even though I've largely failed in the venue and these days my level of keeping I put on tefillin every day. I make kiddush and do Shabbos type things, but like my level of observance is probably like conservative now, but I still see myself as a Hasidic Jew, and like without the beard, I don't know. I don't think I don't think I'd be able to reinvent myself. I might be capable of, but I don't see myself reinventing myself. I think I'll be a Hasidic Jew till I die, and the beard, the yarmulke, tzitzis. I don't see myself changing that from. I think that's one of the things that kept us going here, also in our streaming. That for whatever reasons, our disagreements or seeing things different, we're kind of like two people that went all in on Judaism and had our failures, but are still all in despite our failures.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap up tonight. Any final words?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, God bless, and I appreciate talking just because you're one of the few people I talk with regularly, and kind of like psychoanalyzing each other. It's important to keep grounded and realistic. So I find these conversations valuable, and Elliot's also he comes on my show, and we've been talking about the book. I actually watched, so. I think Elliot should hire an employee person. I saw maybe you advised him otherwise, but that's fine. So if Elliot wants to talk to me Sunday night, and the alternative side where Dooovid will disagree and think maybe you should go ahead and hire an employee. But God bless. Have a great night.
Take care. Bye bye, everyone.